Good evening, good evening. Before we get started with the message tonight, just a couple of quick announcements. If you guys want to tithe or give offerings, there's tithing envelopes in the back as well as a box. It helps us pursue the ministry of Ekklesia. And also, if anybody wants to sign up to serve, get connected in any way, there's also a sign up sheet in the back. I talked to you guys last week about some of the ministries that we're involved with, specifically Rescue the Children with the Fresno mission. If you're interested, just sign up and I'll contact you and I'll let you know what that all includes. You can't just show up. You have to go through an orientation and all that stuff. Once you do that, you're in the system and you can serve. Candace and I, we serve with our kids by going out there and just doing game night with the kids. But there's a million other ways to serve. If you guys want to get involved, just put your information down there and I'll contact you personally. All right, tonight we're talking about happiness. Happiness. Chris just led us in reading Psalm 103. And just ask yourself this question. Just, you don't have to answer out loud, but would you consider yourself a happy person? Would you consider yourself a happy person? I see someone looking at his spouse. Yeah, look at yourself. Are you a happy person? Are you a happy person? I asked my son this, and he did not immediately say, "Oh yeah, of course, Dad, you're happy." He just said, "It depends." I'm like, "Yeah, well, what about your mom?" We're not going to go there. But how would you consider yourself your happiness level? Are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy in life? Are you happy with where you are? Do you think God is happy? That's an interesting question, right? I asked that in one of our Facebook theology groups. And nobody answered the question. Nobody got engaged with it. I thought it was going to spark some dialogue, but I think, a lot of us, we don't know how to answer the question, is God happy? Is God happy? Do you think that God is in heaven happy? Well, maybe he's a happy God, but what about all the atrocities in the world? Is he happy with all of those? When I ask the question, are you a happy person, it doesn't mean that the only expression you have is happiness, or the only feeling you have is happiness. It's the same thing when we ask the question of God, is God happy? It's not to say that he's only happy, right? Like he's only love or he's only just, but is God happy? This is one of the most important practical messages because this really guides every aspect of what we do in life, because I believe that we are hardwired for happiness. God wants you to be happy. Every single person, no matter who you are, you seek and you long for happiness. There's not a single person in this planet that does not want happiness. Even our Declaration of Independence, it says that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights given to us by our Creator. Right, the pursuit of happiness. It doesn't say the promise of happiness or the outcome of happiness, but at least the pursuit of it. Why? Because every single human longs for happiness. So then the question comes, well, then why are so many of us depressed? Why do so many struggle with being unhappy, unfulfilled, sad, anxious? A couple of statistics. Approximately 1 in 5 adults in the U.S., for measure's sake, that's 43.8 million people, or 18%, experiences mental illness in a given year. That's a huge number. Almost 20% of our population this year will experience some issue with mental illness. 1 in 5 Americans will be impacted by mental illness in their lifetime. It's an estimated that 1 in 10 U.S. adults report depression. 1 in 10. That means, look at the people in this room, that there's likely someone right now in this room struggling with depression. I thought this was insane that we lost as many people to suicide last year than we did to breast cancer. Same amount. We lost about as many people to suicide as we did to breast cancer. Suicide is the leading cause of death for ages 15 to 44. And so what that means is 1 death in every single 12 minutes. Every 12 minutes, someone's committed suicide in this country. Why is that? When everybody wants happiness, but we're so depressed. Blaise Pascal quoted this. He said, "All men seek happiness. This is without exception. Whatever the different means they employ, meaning whatever ways you try to seek and get happiness, those are different means they employ, but they all tend to this end. So you're going to seek happiness one way. You're going to seek it a completely different way. But the point is all of us seek it, right? So whatever different means they employ, all of them tend to this end. The cause of some going to war and the cause of others avoiding it, it's the same desire in both, just attended with different views. So our views, our mindset will determine how we seek to fulfill ourselves and to seek happiness. The will, meaning your desire, your ability, your will, never takes the least step but to this object. You cannot help but to try to be happy. This is the motive of every action of every man, even those who hang themselves. So again, why are so many people unhappy? We have to assume the biblical perspective that God wants you happy. You have to believe that God wants you to be happy. I've met people who don't believe this. And it's not like they're rare. Like you go into the church and there's almost like this air of holiness from being miserable. And that's not the God that we serve. God is good and he wants us to be happy. He created us for happiness. The problem is not with God, but it's within us, that we tend to seek happiness and fulfillment in all the wrong places. If you have your Bibles, turn to Jeremiah 2. There's a few passages in the Old Testament that I want us to look at. In Jeremiah 2, verse 13, God gets really personal with the Israelites, and he's like, what fault did you guys find in me that you left me to seek something else? And in Jeremiah 2:13, he says, my people have committed a double evil, or my people have committed two sins. What are those two sins? They've abandoned me, the fountain of living water, and dug cisterns for themselves, cracked cisterns that can hold no water. So he says the sin here is the Israelites, there were two sins. They've left the fountain of living water, and they've tried to seek fulfillment in something else. And he calls those things cisterns. A cistern is just a thing that holds water. But they're not just cisterns, they're broken cisterns. Why would you leave a fountain of living water? It's never ending. The water, the living water that God has, he says you've left that to try to get this stagnant water in a cistern that's just sitting there. And it's not even a working cistern. It's broken, it's cracked. That means it's leaking. It's never satisfied. It's never fulfilled. And you've left me to try to seek something that's empty. In Isaiah 55:2, he says, why do you spend money on what isn't food and your wages on what doesn't satisfy? Like God is very offended that they would leave him, the source of all joy, and try to seek happiness and fulfillment in other things. Why are you spending your money on stuff that's not food and your wages on things that don't even satisfy? Listen carefully to me. Eat what's good. He wants you to enjoy. He wants you to eat what is good, and you will enjoy the choicest foods. And then we see this echoed in the New Testament in 1 John 2, verses 15 through 17. John says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love for the Father is not in them. Like that's a bold statement. Don't love the world. Like this world has a lot of awesome stuff available in it. Right? And so what is he talking about? Don't love people? He's like, no, he's obviously not talking about the people in the world. But he's saying this world system, what the world has to offer you that promises fulfillment, satisfaction, and happiness, don't love that. If you love that stuff, then love for the Father isn't even in you. For everything in the world. So he tells you, this is what the world has to offer. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. It doesn't come from the Father, it comes from the world. The world and all of those desires, all of its desires are passing away. But whoever does the will of God lasts forever, lives forever. God wants us happy. He wants you happy. We just tend to seek happiness in the wrong place, and he's beckoning us. He's sending out an invitation. He's saying, come, enjoy the fountain of living water. Enjoy life. I'll give you real food. I'll give you real satisfaction. And the sinful heart says, no, I think I'm going to go find it over here. So if we're talking about happiness, I have to define what happiness is. What do I mean by happiness? If you talk to psychologists, I said last week I've been studying the science of happiness just as an interesting kind of side study. And so psychologists define happiness as subjective well-being. So subjective is like to your own personal preference, your well-being. So it's referring to your present emotional state. So they focus on an individual's overall personal feelings about their life in the present. So when you talk to a psychologist and they're gonna talk to you about like, hey, is this person a happy person? They're thinking like, how satisfied are you with your current state of life? And that could be all kinds of different people. Like, you don't have to be a Christian to say like, in this moment, I feel like pretty satisfied. I have this feeling of happiness. Like, obviously you don't need to be a Christian to have feelings of joy and feelings of happiness, right? We see that all the time. There's two aspects of happiness. When you ask somebody if they're happy, one is the balance of emotions, right? So when we ask, are you happy? Is God happy? Right? God is angry with the wicked every day, right? We understand this, but he says, this is my son in whom I am well pleased, right? It says that he takes delight in the praises of, so God has delight, God has pleasure, he also has displeasure. So it's the full range of emotions. We're made in God's image. God has there's a complexity of emotions within God, and he's able to sustain all of those at the same time. So his being happy does not take away his anger at the wicked or his anger at the atrocities that are happening in this world, but those atrocities don't take away from his happiness, right? And so when you think of yourself, are you happy? It's managing all of the complexities of your emotions, and happy people tend to focus primarily on the positive emotions. Right? Happy people tend to hold on to more positive emotions than negative. And there's a lot for you to be happy about. There's a lot more than you probably think that you have to be happy about. And so that's the first thing, is the balance of emotions. And the second thing is life satisfaction. So not only having all of these emotions and being able to balance them while focusing on the positive ones like gratitude and thanksgiving and satisfaction, contentment, all those things, but it's also life satisfaction. How satisfied are you with the different aspects of your life? One of the men's groups that I'm in is called the League of Imperfect Gentlemen, right? And so my friend Ryan Hansen, he wrote this book called End Average. And in End Average, he talks about finding fulfillment from a faith-based perspective on faith, relationships, finance, and health. So in his perspective, like life, every aspect of your life is tied to one of those things: your faith, your money, your relationships, and your health. And so trying to find the balance of all those things, like, good luck, right? You don't find balance, right? So people say, hey, how's your work-life balance? I'm like, I don't know. I don't ever have work-life balance, but what I try to have is not balance in my life, but obedience. I have all of these different aspects of my life that God has called me to, and sometimes it feels really imbalanced. Like stepping into a new season of planting a church while I'm still growing a business, and all, like, that does not seem like a balanced life, and people look at me like I'm crazy for doing all of these things. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be balanced, I'm trying to be obedient. And sometimes you're gonna have feel a little bit imbalanced, right? But is that gonna take away from your happiness? Is that gonna take away from your joy? So there's 7 different types of happiness. There's pleasure, right? Pleasure, this is the immediate sense of enjoyment that satisfies the senses. This is me every single morning at 5:30 with my first cup of coffee for the day. This is pleasure. Every day, you think it would get old, but no, every single day, just smelling the roast and taking that first sip. It's a little bit too hot to take too big, so it just coats my tongue. It's like, oh my gosh, God, this is so good. That's pleasure, right? Chicken, cooked, delicious chicken. God gave us taste buds, right? Pleasure. It's the immediate sense of enjoyment that satisfies the senses, right? Listening to music, it's all of those things. Then there's satisfaction. This is a sense of completion or accomplishment of a goal. You just feel satisfied. Contentment, right? You could be content and be poor. And you could be not content and be extremely wealthy, and vice versa. It doesn't matter. The Apostle Paul says, I've learned the secret of being content in every circumstance. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. He says, I know what it's like to be well-fed, and I know what it's like to be hungry. But contentment isn't dependent upon my circumstances. You always have something to complain about. You always will. But you'll always have something to be grateful for. And contentment is just like, man, I am so blessed. I'm happy. a sense of lacking for nothing. Like, I don't need anything else. I am content. Now, that doesn't mean like complacent, right? Because I want to live a content life, but I don't want to live complacent. Like, I'm just cool, I'm just chill. Like, no, like God has given me drive. He's given me vision, and I want to pursue those visions, but I am still content. Like, I don't need anything to be fulfilled. I don't need the accomplishment of those visions. And that's where people, I think, especially entrepreneurs, especially high capacity people, is they only find contentment in completion of some sort of a goal. And I'm like, no, I have these visions, but I'm content right where I am. So there's contentment. There's excitement. Excitement is an aspect of happiness. This is a sense of positive anticipation. You're just waiting, you're excited. There's gratitude, a sense of thankfulness for things. There's fulfillment, a sense of achievement. There's optimism, right? Optimism is a hopeful, positive outlook on things. And so if you have all those things, pleasure, satisfaction, contentment, excitement, gratitude, fulfillment, and optimism, and you tend to focus on those more than you do the negative feelings, then you're overall a happy person, generally speaking. But the Bible has another word for this, and the Bible uses it often. It calls it blessed. Blessed. This is what being blessed means. Happy, fortunate, blessed. And speaking of the Bible, like, I better bring in some more Bible, because if this is all good, but if all I have is secular psychology, then we're all in trouble and we're wasting time. The Bible does not support the idea that the more you suppress happiness in your life, the more righteous you are. I have to drill that in. Like, there are people who think that if you just live miserable and you just live poor and you live all these things, like there's a sense of holiness and righteousness in that. And God does not say that there's anything righteous about that. It doesn't say that there's anything unrighteous about having humble means, but it doesn't say that there's anything righteous that you're suppressing happiness. That's not what he wants for us. In fact, according to the Bible, unless we're pursuing happiness, then we can't even come to God. He says in Hebrews 11:6, for whoever would draw near to God, like I want to draw near to God, he must believe first that God exists and he rewards those who seek him. Like, you have to believe that God is a rewarder. He wants to reward you. He wants to give you good things. As I made a list of all the things to be happy about, so I was prepping for this, and I was like, hey, when's the last time I've made like a gratitude list? Because a lot of times my journals are just me griping and this lament about all these things, and you guys are never going to read that stuff, right? But sometimes I just write down things that I'm grateful for, right? And so the other day I was like, what do I have to be happy about? And I just encourage you guys to do this in your own personal time. Just make a list. It doesn't have to be in a journal. Just write it down. The question, what do I have to be happy about? And just start writing things down. And as I made that list, it really made it hard not to feel like I was one of God's favorites. I was like, man, God, you have blessed me so much. Like, I feel like spoiled by you, by how much you've blessed me with. I'm extremely happy. And it got me to think that my level of intimacy with God is directly tied to my level of gratitude towards him. My level of intimacy, my closeness to God, is directly tied to my gratitude. If I'm not grateful for him, then I'm just like, I'm coming to him out of duty. But if I start listing all the things that I have to be happy about, I'm like, God, you've blessed me. I am extremely happy. I feel like I'm spoiled. And it drew me closer to God. Why? Because I believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Ungrateful people are unhappy people. Right? If you ask if you're a happy person and you're like pausing, like, I don't know, check your gratitude. How grateful are you? How often do you live with a sense of gratitude? It's one of my affirmations that I do every day. Like, God, I'm extremely blessed beyond anything that I deserve. I appreciate life and all you've chosen to fill it with. I'm grateful. Gratitude. Ungrateful people are unhappy, and unhappy people can't come close, can't draw near to God because you're ungrateful, you're unhappy. Romans 1:21, it talks about, for although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks. They didn't glorify him and they didn't thank him. They were ungrateful. So what happened? But their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Having an ungrateful attitude darkens your heart. It darkens your mind. On the flip side, Psalm 37:4, it says, take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires. Right? The carnal mind sees that and they're like, I have heart's desires, right? And they might be sinful. So how do I get my heart's sinful desires? It says, well, I got to take delight in the Lord. So I'm going to use the Lord. I'm going to come to him as a means to an end. I want this thing over here, so I'm going to come to God to get this on the other side. It's like, no. You take your delight in God. Like, you come to him for him. And he changes your heart to desire the things that you should desire. So when we're talking about we find fulfillment, we try to find fulfillment in all the wrong things, not only check your gratitude, but check, are you actually delighting yourself in God? Or are you trying to delight yourself with the things that this world has to offer? Psalm 22:26, it says that the poor will eat and be satisfied. Those who seek the Lord will praise him. May your hearts live forever. Psalm 16:11 says, God, you make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. God wants your joy. He wants you to have pleasure, to seek pleasure. I'm not going to read it right now, but I'd encourage you to read the entire chapter of Philippians 4. It's really short, but just circle or highlight every aspect where Paul is interested in our joy, right? So words like joy, rejoice, don't be anxious, be content, think positively, goodness, satisfaction. And in that chapter, I counted 12 times where God is really interested in our happiness. So the point is God wants you happy. So there is a difference between worldly happiness and God-given happiness. I wasn't just calling it biblical happiness, but God-given happiness, the happiness that God gives. And so some people disagree with this, right? So just check it out for yourself. But there's this popular teaching in the church where we make a distinction between happiness and joy. All right? There's happiness, which is what the world offers, and then there's joy, which is what God offers. And they make a distinction between happiness and joy. So do we have to sacrifice happiness in order to get joy? And the principle is right. There's things that like don't feel good in the moment, but ultimately lead to our satisfaction and joy in God. That is absolutely correct. But it is an unbiblical teaching to say that God wants you to sacrifice all of your happiness so that you could get real joy. You don't find that in the Bible. There's not a sense of like, oh, God doesn't want you happy. No, God wants you happy. He wants you blessed. We make this false dichotomy between happiness and joy. Like happiness is what the world has, joy is what the believer has. It's just, I don't see it as scriptural. And the reason why I think this is an important point is because every single one of us wants to be happy. And we can't draw near to God unless we believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Like all of us want to be happy, and if all we say is, well, God doesn't give you happiness, but he'll give you joy, it's like, it's innate within us. We want happiness, and I don't think it's helpful to tell people that God doesn't care about your happiness, when he does. He does. He wants you to be happy. Every time the Bible calls us to sacrifice a worldly pleasure for happiness, it's rooted in a promise for greater and more fulfilling, everlasting, eternal happiness. Like we don't sacrifice anything. We're sacrificing poison to get food. That's what we sacrifice. Our sinful hearts desire what is bad for us, but God wants us to be happy. Matthew 19, Peter deals with this, or Jesus deals with this in Peter. Because Peter's like, I've sacrificed all this stuff for you, right? And Peter answers in Matthew 19:27, Jesus, we've left everything to follow you. I sacrificed all this stuff that makes me happy. What then will there be for us? And Jesus said to them, truly, I tell you, at the renewal of all things, when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who's left houses or brothers or sisters or fathers or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life. We don't sacrifice anything. He comes to Jesus, is like, hey, Jesus, I have this like holy, righteous thing that I've done for you. I've sacrificed all this stuff. And Jesus is like, you're going to receive 100 times as much as this. You don't sacrifice anything. You come to me and you get way more than what you sacrificed. Like when we sacrifice our money to get things, we don't say like, oh man, I lost money on that amazing meal. No, we traded something for something we valued as greater. as greater, right? And it's just the same thing. We're trading off what is poison and damaging to us for eternal, everlasting happiness. And it's not just a promise that we get in heaven. You can experience joy today. God doesn't want you depressed on earth until you die. He wants you happy. C.S. Lewis talks about this. He says, worldly happiness versus God-given happiness. He says, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. See, a lot of Christians, they think that like my desire for happiness is just way too strong. He's like, no, it's too weak. We are half-hearted creatures fooling around with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. It's like an ignorant child who wants to go making mud pies in a slum because he can't imagine what is meant by an offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. He's saying that it's not that you have a problem with seeking joy too much. You don't seek it enough. You're just settling for things that are empty. Just because you have positive feelings of happiness doesn't mean that it's all God-given though, right? You ask any non-believer who has, a season of prosperity and abundance and all these things, and they have all their heart's desires, and they have these feelings of happiness, doesn't mean that it's God-given happiness, right? So you have to ask yourself, not just a question, are you happy? But if you are happy, praise God, is your current state of happiness leading you towards or distracting you from ultimate and eternal happiness in God through Christ? Let me ask you again. If you're happy, praise God. I talk to people all the time. They're like, man, I went through a rough patch. Maybe I've been through a bad divorce, or maybe I'm coming out of addiction, or maybe I'm coming out of whatever, and life is good. I have a good relationship. I'm free from addiction. I have a job that's steady. Praise the Lord. Is your current state of happiness drawing you closer to God or further away from Him? And are you just reveling in all of the blessings apart from giving gratitude to the Savior who's given you all of these things? Are you using the blessings that He's given you to glorify Him, or using them just to satisfy your own pleasure, your own sinful nature? So just because you have feelings of happiness doesn't mean that it's all from God, right? We can have feelings of happiness that are really just satisfying the flesh. And that's what Paul is really interested in helping us make the distinction is between satisfaction of the flesh and being satisfied and content in God. See, the world has the fallacy, do whatever you want to do that makes you happy. In fact, the Satanic Bible, in the actual Bible, there's the greatest command, love the Lord your God with all your heart, right? There's a second, which is like love your neighbor as yourself. In the Satanic Bible, there's a greatest command, and the greatest command in the Satanic Bible is do as you will. Do whatever you want. If you knew that, yeah, that's the actual greatest command in the Satanic Bible, is just do whatever you want. And what does the world say? Do what makes you feel happy. The problem is what makes us feel happy isn't always good for us. We have a sinful nature. The world doesn't account for our sinful nature. So it's not do whatever makes you happy. It's do whatever God says will bring you ultimate happiness, even if it's contrary to what your flesh thinks will bring you happiness. We get into trouble when we take our cues on happiness from the flesh or from the world or from the devil. The Bible says do as God wills. And what will happen? You'll have eternal, enduring happiness. Hebrews 11, Moses talks about this. It says that by faith, in Hebrews 11, 24 through 27, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Think about that. Moses, he knew he was an Israelite. They were slaves in Egypt, and he lucked out. We know it wasn't luck. It was the sovereign hand of God guiding where he was, but he grew up in Pharaoh's household because he's down the Nile River in the basket, right? And Pharaoh's daughter found him and raised him as her own. But it says that he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose instead to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Like the world has to offer you everything in Pharaoh's palace. You can have all of that. He's like, yeah, but it's fleeting. It's just the pleasures of sin. When I would actually choose, it says he regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt because he was looking ahead to his reward. By faith he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. Like, we have to take the blinders off of like what's right in front of me. This is going to bring me happiness. He's like, no, it's not. It's fleeting pleasures of sin when ultimate happiness is offered to you. There's this book that I recommend all the time in business called Delivering Happiness. And so the author, his name's Tony Hsieh, he founded this company called Zappos. If you ever buy shoes off of Zappos, he was the CEO for Zappos for many years, and he sold it to Amazon for $1.5 billion or something like that. And the book Delivering Happiness is all about his story in entrepreneurship and how he came to be the CEO of Zappos and how they were going to have a culture of happiness. And this is actually what that book like got me started on me studying the science of happiness. Because I wanted to have a happy culture as a company. And, I own a business, I have employees, and I want people to be happy that work for me. And I want to be happy. I don't want to go to a place that sucks to work, right? And so he talks about this story about how he started this company. It was awesome. It wasn't Zappos, it was some other tech company. And it started really fun and organic with all his friends. And then it became too big to be just, have a nice culture. And it became corporate and bureaucratic and all this stuff, and he hated it. He said he built this gigantic company with over 100-something employees, and he hated coming to work every single day. And then he sold it to Microsoft for several $1 million. And they said, when you sell a company at that size, you don't just sell it and like, okay, good luck. Like, they want you to stay. And so I think there's another $34 million on the line, like if he stayed for 18 months. And I think 3 months into it, he's like, just take the 34 million. I don't even want to be a part of this, because he hated it so much, because he didn't want to be a part of something that made him unhappy. And so when he started Zappos, he's like, no, we're going to have a culture of happiness. And so the book is all about delivering happiness. And so there's a secular guy writing about, and he knows that I have this innate desire for happiness, and I'll be willing to walk away from $34 million to have happiness. And so he starts this company, but the tragic thing is he never found ultimate happiness in God. He sold his company, Zappos, to Amazon for $1.5 billion. Multi-millionaire, has influence, speaking all over the place, but he died in 2020 during COVID. Not because of COVID. He died of depression. He was losing his mind, couldn't find happiness. His circle was so, it was like he hired people that were in his close circle to be, hey, come away and be happy with me. It was just crazy stuff. He said he'll give them their dream salary to come to one of his cabins and just live there and be happy. Started doing drugs, started doing whippets, and he was walking around in the snow barefoot. And then one day he barricaded himself in his room and lit it on fire and died. The guy who wrote the book on happiness tried to seek it apart from the Lord, and he died of depression in a terrible way. And that's the vanity of seeking happiness apart from the Lord. There's one guy in the Bible who, like we always say, like, hey, money won't buy you happiness, right? But I never seen a person on a jet ski frowning, right? It's true. Like, money can't buy me happiness, but it can buy me a boat, right? There's that song. You can buy me, I don't know the rest of the words, but you get it. Like, money can't buy happiness, and we know that, but we're like, but I just want you, God, just test me on it. Just test me on, like, this money won't buy me happiness, right? But there is one guy who, like, lived this out, not just money, but everything the world has to offer. His name was Solomon, and he was the wisest man who ever lived, right? Other nations came to Israel to seek the wisdom of Solomon, to see if what they even heard was true, and they said not only were they true, but like they didn't even tell the full story of how wise and how amazing this place is. And he wrote one of my favorite books in the Bible, which is a strange thing, Job and Ecclesiastes, which is a very weird thing to have two of those be my favorite books. But Ecclesiastes, the whole thing is like vanity. It's all vanity, right? Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes to show you that it's all vain. If all you have to seek is what the world has to offer, it's going to lead to emptiness and unfulfillment. And he says, basically, trust me, I've done it. So read the book of Ecclesiastes and be careful, because it's not like, oh, like this sounds really weird. Yeah, he's talking about how he tried to seek happiness in all these things. In wisdom, right? Ecclesiastes 1:12-18, he says, I tried to seek purpose and meaning in wisdom. And what happened? He became the most wise person on the planet. And he says, guess what I found out? That wise die along with the fool. He says, well, I try to seek pleasure, with worldly pleasures in Ecclesiastes 2, 1 through 11. He says, but all that stuff is going to burn up and it doesn't actually amount to anything. And he says, well, then I'm going to give myself to hard work, right? And these are the workaholics among us. Like, I'm going to find happiness in losing myself in my work. And I find purpose in there. And he says, yeah, but you're going to leave it off to some fool who's going to probably destroy it anyway. In Ecclesiastes 2, 17 through 20, he says, okay, well, not wisdom, not worldly pleasure, not hard work. What about advancement? In Ecclesiastes 4, 13 through 16, he says, I've advanced above everybody. And it's still all vanity. And what about riches? And he became the most rich man who's ever lived on this planet. And it was all vanity. And this was the summary statement of Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes 12, 13 through 14, he says, now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion. After I try to seek wisdom, or I try to seek happiness in all of these things, here's the conclusion. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or evil. He's like, that's the only thing that was lasting that I found. So what are the hindrances to happiness? Why are so many people depressed? Why can't you be happy? There's several people. If you find yourself struggling with depression, you're not alone. We already saw 1 in 10 just this year in this room will likely suffer through depression at some point in time. But we also see great men and women of God, not only throughout history, but also in the Bible, who struggled with depression. Jeremiah said, I just want to die. Habakkuk, Lord, I'm depressed. What's going on? All this injustice around me. Jonah, Job, Peter, all of these are men of God who at some point in time were so depressed that they just would rather die than live in the darkness that they were living in. And God gave them hope and he brought them through that. But if you're struggling through that, you're not alone, and it's not a permanent thing. God doesn't want that for you, and there's a way out. And so you have to believe that God wants you happy, and if God wants something for you, he'll give you the grace to be able to do that. Right? He's not just going to jack with us and say, well, I want you happy, but guess what? You're never going to find it. I don't think that's the God we serve. So things that lead to depression. One is we might be trying to carry burdens we're not fit to carry. I am guilty of this all the time. I try to carry burdens that are not meant for me to carry. Matthew 11, 28 through 30 says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy. God doesn't want you to be burdened. He wants you to have an easy yoke and a light burden. Another thing that leads to depression is not only carrying burdens that aren't meant for you, like I'm carrying all this weight on me, Lord. And he said, yeah, but that's actually my weight to carry. So don't try to do this in your own strength. You have to receive everything that I give you with gratitude, as this is a gift from me. But not only that, isolation leads to depression. Are you isolated? Are you on an island? Are you by yourself? Genesis 2:18 says it's not good for man to be alone. We were made for a community. We were made for other people. And just because you're around people doesn't mean you're not isolated. You can be isolated in a group because of inauthenticity. I don't want to be real and open up with people, and so I'm not going to be authentic. And what? You're alone. Nobody knows you. Everybody sees you, but nobody knows you. You're seen by everybody, known by none. Why? You're isolated, and that's not good. And that's exhausting, too, to be around people and trying to put on a front like you're someone else. That's just tiring. Another thing that leads to depression is just not seeing things from God's perspective. Happiness is rooted in the right perspective. James 1 says, count it a joy, my brothers, when you suffer trials of many kind. It makes no sense. You could count it a joy even though you're suffering trials. Why? Because you have to have the right perspective, knowing that the testing of your faith builds perseverance. And perseverance has to have its work so that your faith will be complete, not lacking anything. So whatever God has for you requires a level of faith that you don't possess yet. And in order for you to walk in that faith and for your faith to be perfected, you need to persevere through some things. And so if you're persevering through something, count it a joy, because the testing of your faith builds that perseverance. So you can have two options going through the trial: complain gripe, moan, or you could count it a joy, having the right perspective. Romans 12:2 says, don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. And finally, Philippians 4:6-7 says, don't be anxious about everything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. It's a commandment, don't be anxious. If you're struggling with anxiety, just know that you're commanded to not struggle through that. That sounds harsh for some people, like, oh, you're not being sympathetic. I'm just reading what the text says. He doesn't want you to be anxious. But what is the opposite of that? In every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Are you praying? Are you petitioning? Are you giving thanks? Are you making your requests known to God? And what happens? The peace of God which transcends your understanding. You don't have to have understanding. His peace goes beyond your mind. Peace in here doesn't have to make sense up here. The peace of God that transcends your understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And so as I finish up and like, okay, I'm not supposed to be depressed. I'm not supposed to be anxious. God wants me happy. I want to give you some tools to pursue happiness. How do you pursue happiness? And there's 5 things, and I'll just go through them real quickly. One is get a vision for your life. This is the message from last week about identity. If you were not here, listen to that message. These two messages kind of go hand in hand. Who are you? Who has God created you to be? Get a vision for your life. You're created as God's handiwork with good works that God had in mind for you to walk in. And me and elders, we're here to help you find your ministry. We're here to help you. So seek guidance from elders who can help. Second thing is trust in God's active presence and sovereignty in your life. It says in Proverbs 3:6, in all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight. So you don't look at the end goal, the vision, right? Like, God, I'm going to be happy if I get this. He says, no, don't look just to the end, but enjoy God's presence in the journey throughout. Third thing is take every thought captive. So on the one hand, you need to get a vision, like what am I created for? And the second hand is like, God, I need to know that whatever it is I'm created for, even though I'm not necessarily walking in that today, you're with me right where I am. But the third thing is like, I know that thoughts of depression and sadness and anxiety are gonna come against me, and I need to take those thoughts captive. And I do that all the time. I'll be usually my prayer time, sometimes in the shower. I'll be thinking a certain way, and I'm like, look, that was not a thought from God. And so I need to take that thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. Like it says in 2 Corinthians, it says, take every thought captive. Make it obedient to Christ. Not every thought that comes to you is from God, so you need to take your thoughts captive. Say, no, that's not from God. That's not who I am. I don't believe that. I'm not going to live in depression. The fourth thing is guard your mind. Right? Guard what comes into your mind and your association. One of my mentors told me that I can tell you where someone's going to be in 5 years by the books they read and the people they hang out with and they associate with. Who are you associating with? Are you around negative people who are a drain? That's going to be contagious and that's going to rub off on you. What content are you feeding your mind with? Guard your heart, guard your mind. He says, whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is lovely, whatever is pleasing, whatever is trustworthy and of good report, think on these things. Right? There was this guy that said he did not know why he was going to bed with terrors every night and waking up completely anxious. And his psychologist found out that he was watching horror movies every night right before he went to bed. It's like, that's probably not a good idea. Guard your heart and your mind. Right? Not to be legalistic about it, but I'm just saying, like, if there's depression and anxiety, what are you feeding yourself with? There's probably a contributing factor. What are you feeding your mind with? Who are you hanging around with? And the last thing is practice gratitude. It is very difficult to be unhappy and grateful. I just don't see how you could be a grateful, unhappy person. And so practice gratitude. What does that mean, practice gratitude? That means literally every single day in thanksgiving to God, make a list of things that you have to be happy about, things that you're grateful for. God is passionate about your happiness, and more important than long-term positive emotions and feelings, God is after your eternal happiness. This is the starting point and the finishing point. Like, he wants you to be eternally happy, eternally secure, eternally joyful, and that's only found in Christ. You can have momentary pleasures and a false sense of meaning and spend eternity in hell. apart from Christ, right? These are the funerals of people that we all speak well of, but Solomon gives us the reality of life and death apart from God. It's all vanity. And so if you want eternal, lasting happiness, quit trying to do it yourself. You know, what my pastor, one of the things he'd always say is like, how's that working for you? Well, yeah, well, I really want to do this thing. I really love her. I really love him. I really love doing these things. Okay, well, how's that working for you? Well, I want to do this, and I think this is going to, how's that working for you? It might be working in a moment, but even in a moment, it could all switch. The only time that you're going to be eternally happy is if your happiness and your joy is anchored and rooted in the one who's unchanging, and that's Christ. So ask again if you're happy, and if not, why not? What are the joy killers in your life? When do you find yourself sad? When do you find yourself angry? When do you find yourself frustrated or anxious? What are those joy killers? Take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ. My encouragement to you guys as you're leaving this place is to think about these things. Talk about them in community. Talk about them with each other. There's 4 guiding questions that if you are joining a small group, I'd like you to consider is, are you happy? Or just ask someone, are you happy? Why or why not? What are those joy killers, right? What makes you sad, angry? What part of the gospel do you need to remind yourself of in those times, right? When you think about what are the things that kill my joy? Oh man, I'm really upset or anxious because I got a million things to do and I don't have any time to do it. It's like, oh, okay, what part of the gospel are you not believing? That God doesn't have this day in his hands, that your burden is yours to carry and not his? Like what part of the gospel are you needing to remind yourself of in those times where you're feeling sad, anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, lost? If you are happy, and this is the last question, is your current state of happiness leading you towards or distracting you from ultimate and eternal happiness in God through Christ? Amen.